Google just results 2 days ago. Google, for the first time in its history, crossed 100 billion in terms of revenue in this quarter. It's a new record, ladies and gentlemen. It actually beat the market expectation both at the revenue, the top line, as well as the bottom line. In this week's video, we're going to cover four things. One is Google's results. Compare and contrast it with Meta results. Now, this indicates, therefore, the monetization aspects of artificial intelligence. As you and I know, the heavy investments into capital intensive data centers, as well as actually other equipment that will power the next race for artificial intelligence has heated up tremendously since my last video. Now, the third thing that I'm going to go through is that you and I may not follow it closely, but it's actually the Nikkei breaking new record this week, this month. Do not miss out on that. And fourth, but lastly, I just want to preview for you what's going to happen on Nvidia's results. Yes, it's going to happen next month. But at the GTC conference just unveiled 2 days ago, well, Jensen Wang has already more or less guided on what is the next results and what is the likely flavor of the result. Google's result shows that it's firing from all four cylinders. Take a look at the revenue. It actually up 88 million to 88 billion to 102 billion. But the profits, my God, ladies and gentlemen, it just expanded by 9 billion from 26 billion to 35 billion. Hey, that's almost up 50%, ladies and gentlemen. Which company in the world is able to do that in just one quarter on a year-to-year basis? Well, Google just did. And guess what? Google was actually one of our favorite stocks and still one of our favorite stocks that we've been highlighting to our investors over the years. And if you're following us on our channel, you notice that this is exactly what we've been saying. Hey. But ladies and gentlemen, this is not a stock recommendation. It is not even about investment advisory. Okay, so no investment advice in this channel, just a personal sharing of what we teach in our various classes, as well as my own personal positions in personal expert opinion on many of the stocks. Google on fire. Well, look no further. It's basic search where it has a monopoly, where everybody was fearful that ChatGPT would taking market shares, as well as new models like Claude from Anthropic is getting its market share. This results from Google entrench even further what we have been exploding and clearly shows that search continue to outpace market expectation. The second walloping factor is that look no further. Look at cloud computing. It's up whopping 40%. In terms of percentage return, it is better than what Azure did at 33% or what AWS, the market leader, does at 20%. So Google at 40% has blew. The other great thing is that Sundar Pichai even guided that the backlog of Google has grown to 155 billion. Remember when Oracle releases results and say that its backlog has grown to 55 billion, the share price almost doubled. So if you reckon that yesterday or the last 2 days search in Google is only the beginning, well, I am with you. Then the other thing keeping bear in mind is that Google's Sundar Pichai also mentioned that the number of 1 billion more in terms of deals signed in the first 9 months of this year was more than the last 2 years. That's 2003 and 2004 combined. What does it tell you, ladies and gentlemen? In my last video, which I shared just a few months ago, I've showed you that essentially Google is likely to be my next 10 million stock. I've shared with you my screenshot of my holdings of 12,400 shares in Google held with my private bank, UBS Private Bank. At that time, the price of 235 means that I was on the verge of exceeding 4 million. Now, this is my latest update. Yes, it's the same share number at 12,400, the same cost at 115, and you can see that essentially based on yesterday's closing price 281, I have exceeded 4 million in value. In fact, I am on the cusp of testing 5 million in just one stock. That is actually Google. Rest assured, ladies and gentlemen, as I've shared in my videos, I reckon that Google is likely to be the next 10 million worth value stock just in one stock. So do follow our channel or come to our event classes because we're going to show you my journey, a real time, real shares as I journey, and hopefully Google will be able to make it in terms of 10 million. My earlier projection was 2029. It may happen sooner or later, hard to say, but 10 million is a lot of money. So what do I do with my Google approaching 5 million in terms of value just on one particular stocks, just based on 12,400 shares that I bought 3 years ago in 2022 when I presented to GCP Global investors in our various classes. Now, essentially, in my written email to many of my students and investors, I've actually shared that in the basis of me thinking that Google will hit 10 million in terms of value to me, whether it's going to happen in 2029, 2030, 2031, depends on a few things. One is the assumption that the net profit growth is going to be only at 20%, when the historical growth rate for Google on a net profit basis in the last 5 years in particular, has been in the region of more like 27 to 32%. So I'm taking a more conservative view at only 20%. Now, Google also is the fact that one of the largest share buyback companies. This year they have allocated 70 billion. The year before it was about 60 billion. The year before was about 50 billion. So if we use that assumption to continue going forward, I think the number of shares in Google right now is 12.1 billion. By 2029, 2030, thereabouts, I expect the number of shares to go down to 10 billion. So for simplistic reasons, when net profit actually hits 250 billion in 2029, be it 2030. Now, again, let's trace back how realistic that is. If you look at basically HSBC, which is one of the noted expert on Google shares, has actually said that the next net profit growth is going to grow 60 billion between last year when it hit a net profit of 100 billion to 160 billion in 2 years' time. Now extrapolate further into 2029, 2030, that profit number is going to hit 250 billion. So essentially, my assumption, let me know if you think it's actually realistic, because if you then take the net profit of 250 divide by 10 billion shares, you get 250 billion. You get an EPS of about 25 cents. 25 cents, if you multiply by the current, assuming by the time the market valuation for the max 7 is about 24. Historically, the Google is trading at a discount to the max 7, and has been the case, but I would expect that it will slowly retrace up to the average of the max 7, which currently is trading at 27. So if you take a just 10% discount based on that, I think the assumption, but anyway, these are assumptions going forward. So do let me know in the column below rather, whether you reckon that these assumptions would be valid. Now, the second company we're going to take a look at based on their latest results is Meta. As you know, the Meta had a huge fall, down 11% in one single day. It's one largest single day drop in the last 3 years. Essentially, what does the result tells you? So this is the next company we're going to take a look at in detail.
Artlist.io.
Better blame it on the one beautiful bill that Donald Trump actually tried to pass. So actually, it's not beautiful. It's become a one ugly bill for Meta, where they had to take a 16 billion provisional loss. But really, look no further. I think markets basically most spoke out on the few things that Meta actually mentioned. One is the fact that its spending in 2026 is going to be higher on a percentage basis than what they do for this year. Two, they already guided that this year's spending was going to grow to higher. That's between 72 to 72, 70 to 72 billion. Three, they continue to unrelentingly spend on AI. Now, if you take a step back and see the analysis and the historical performance of Meta, it's quite clear that Zuckerberg, has made mistakes. One is the fact that he has gone in big, all in on metaverse. What has metaverse shown? Losses all these years. Uh, if you look at Reality Labs since 2020, what has Reality Labs shown? Losses up to as much as 70 billion. So are you going to tell me that essentially they are going to waste more shareholders' funds going to it? Is it not better to be buying back shares and returning money back to shareholders or spend less? That means what market is looking for is capital discipline. Yes, market may be enamored by artificial intelligence, but I think they are also artificially scared about artificially inflated stocks. So hopefully, Meta's results is a reminder for tech companies, semicon GPU companies that you need to deliver on the numbers, meaning that monetization of AI initiatives are equally as important as the money that you want to embark to actually spend on it. ちょっと待ってください. Please excuse me while the Nikkei goes up sky. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this week on Monday, the Nikkei crossed 50,000. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, a new era. The sun has risen even higher this era, this week. When the Nikkei crossed 50,000. Are you actually well embedded in it? Well, in our various classes, we have already told you, as in most markets, the turning points are key. And the turning points, once they have actually turned, like in this case for Nikkei, in the second part of last year, we told our investors that, hey, EPS is crippling up very nicely, especially when the Japanese inflation is brought into control. So the Nikkei is actually poised for a re-rating, and true enough, it has come true. And once the momentum got going this year, essentially you can see we are looking at new highs all the time. So essentially for stocks, be it Mac 7, Japanese equities, GPU stocks, that's the kind of turning point we look out for. So what are the stocks that are on the verge of the lookout turning points? Well, to join us for our next class on 15th of November, 2 weeks time. There are still limited spaces left. Do sign up quickly. For our last stock, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to bring out your chips. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, potato chips, because we're going to talk about another chip company, that's Nvidia. Nvidia itself has delivered strong amount, a cheap load of, I would say, a cheap load of announcements during its GPU conference that was just held 2 days ago. They mentioned a few things, and Jensen has actually said one thing: exceptionally strong demand for his flagship products. You know, he has iterated that Blackwell and early Rubin chips were above 50 billion between now to 2026. Wow, 500 billion, ladies and gentlemen. This means it's equal to the GDP of Singapore. And one company, Nvidia, is able to do that. Now, this is a lot of money in a lot less time than its Hooper GPU, that's the previous generation. Now, in addition, Nvidia also mentioned that there were a few deals that they have a new partners. One is on CrowdStrike. They say that they are partnering with CrowdStrike to make cybersecurity at the speed of light. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, no wonder the stock price went up at the speed of light. And they also announced an arrangement with Palantir where they will work with Palantir to accelerate everything that Palantir does so that we can do processing data at a much larger scale and more speed, whether it's structured data of the past, human record data, unstructured data, and process that data for government. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, Nvidia's share price went up, unlike Meta, because now investors, now fund managers have something to work out the numbers for, because they know which are the areas in which the AI will be deployed. Not something that you just go in big and hoping that you will be able to hit big. That's what at GCP Global Investors we do, right? We help you to identify the areas, quantify them, and map out the timing so that you, as smart investors, will be able, no need to guess, to know when the shares perform. Like what we mentioned on Google 3 years ago, essentially, the price has now started to move. So not did it come as a surprise to me? No. Did it? Do you think that it will hit 10 million in terms of my value in 5 years time? Well, this is something that we're sharing right now. Like I say, it's not investment recommendation, and we don't give investment advice. But do join us for our class on the 15th, where we go in depth into the various initiatives of the various GPU players. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, this chart actually shows and summarizes, the future earnings that's coming from Nvidia from its various initiatives, its various joint ventures with OpenAI and a few others. You can see, ladies and gentlemen, that essentially, what we need to do is quantify each of these projects, put it in the overtime time delay, and see when the stock will actually continue to outperform. So if you reckon that Nvidia, which has probably made you 10 times your capital, if you have attended our classes and seen our videos previously, you will notice that the time is now for you to continue to want to actually map out exactly how, because now we're moving from Blackwell to actually Hopper trips to essentially the new Rubin chips rather. So essentially that's key, and that's what we do. We do very quantifiable calculations in our classes so that you know where you stand for each of the stocks. So do you enjoy this week's video? Do tell your friends about us and do sign up for our class on 15th of November.